Part 3. A Moral Case for the Production of Capital. In Part 2, I outlined a moral theory based on the production of capital as I best understand it. Now in Part 3, I review this moral theory in comparison to other commonly held moral theories and make the argument in favor of the production of capital by considering its outcomes versus the outcomes of other moral theories for both the individual and for society. Given a specific set of principles that guide how we live our lives, we can calculate the outcomes of living in accordance to those principles and see if those outcomes are desirable for both ourselves as individuals and for society at large. I believe this is how we can best improve upon our morality, by finding those guides and principles that indeed lead us to the outcomes we desire and rejecting those principles that lead us to undesirable outcomes. The moral theories and their respective goals I wish to address are capital, equality, happiness, freedom, truth, and religious imperatives. You may begin to speculate to what extent you are willing to sacrifice or trade off these goals for one another. How much capital are you willing to sacrifice for happiness? How much happiness are you willing to sacrifice for truth? How much freedom are you willing to sacrifice for equality? How much happiness are you willing to sacrifice for religious imperatives? How many religious imperatives are you willing to sacrifice for happiness? And so on. You may also begin to speculate that these goals aren't necessarily always mutually exclusive. That indeed, freedom or equality can lead to happiness. That indeed, the pursuit of happiness can lead to capital. That indeed, truth or religious imperatives can lead to many of these other goals. Because of this, I now plead to you to recognize that just because someone may share a different set of moral beliefs as yourself, it doesn't mean they are your enemy. Morality is complex, controversial, and diverse. Such is its nature. But can we not learn from others and their perspectives? Do we not control what we believe and have the capacity to change our beliefs for the better? Is this not the case as we reflect upon our own morality and its evolution over the course of our lives? Such a different perspective is what I wish to offer in Part 3. Chapter 8. On Capital. We can see by the definition and nature of capital that it represents much of those material and functional things we desire. Do you not want those things that you desire? The production of capital posits to go out and produce them. Think of all the functions that you desire and realize that capital is a quantification of those desires, that capital is needed to provide for those desires. Tasty and nutritious food, good entertainment, comfortable shelter, quick transportation, quick and reliable communication, quick and reliable information. Even love, caring, and social enjoyment from other human beings needs capital. As we can see from the costs of raising a child, human beings need plenty of capital to come into existence, live happily, and be productive. It is clear that with property rights, we have a strong incentive as sovereign individuals to create capital so we can best attain those functions we most desire. The more capital we create, the more functions we have. So, we can see that the establishment of property rights, combined with our nature as human beings to seek those functions we desire, will create capital for society on the whole. What are some individual moral conclusions that can be drawn from the creation of capital? How can the principles of the production of capital guide our individual decision-making? We would seek to maximize our income as much as possible. We would seek the highest paying jobs and opportunities and take those opportunities to produce more capital when they are found. We would consume for the sake of producing capital and not for the sake of our emotional pleasure. Obviously, food, shelter, transportation, communication, and education are critical functions to our productivity, and so it is moral to consume these, but not for the sake of our emotional pleasure. Productivity trumps our hedonism. To act hedonistically is okay to the extent it complies with our productivity, such as having a comfortable mattress to sleep well, and eating nourishing food so we have energy for the day, but once our pleasures are contrary to our productivity, they should be rejected. We would seek education and knowledge that will allow us to be as productive as possible. Out of all the possible knowledge you can pursue to understand, it is that knowledge that is the most useful in producing capital that you should pursue. To seek to understand the functions that are most desired in society and learn how to best create and provide them. We would seek and maintain those relationships and agreements that we profit from, to cooperate with those in mutually producing capital. Profit directs those new relationships we should pursue and those relationships we should end. Business relationships to create material wealth, friendships to improve your productive beliefs, and if you accept that human beings are a form of capital, then finding a partner to raise a family can be one of the most profitable and fulfilling relationships you create and foster in life. We would seek to produce capital rather than to simply own it. Our ownership of capital and power is only justified if we expect to be productive with it. We would only seek power for the sake of producing more capital with it and not for the sole purpose of holding power, especially if we expect to be destructive with it. We would seek to create and influence those sovereign human beings who will go on creating capital themselves. Our personal loss or transfer of capital is justified if it more than increases the capital of others, creating wealth on the whole of society. To further stress this last point, that we should care about the wealth of society and not just ourselves, let me speak of our nature as human beings, specifically that of our creation, age, and mortality. We are all going to die someday, and there is nothing we can do to stop it. This is an inescapable fact in our current world. As we seek to understand nature to live better lives, we cannot ignore our own nature. Our bodies depreciate over time, just like any form of property. We get older, we get less capable and efficient, and we get more forgetful. For as magnificent as our bodies are, they will fail us in time, and someday we will pass away. Such is life. Yes, we can prolong our life, but regardless of any new technology that is created that can extend it or even make us immune to mortal diseases and phenomena, technology can fail and accidents can happen. And if it can happen, it will happen. Maybe it takes 100 years, 1,000 years, or 10,000 years, but it's just a matter of time. The fact that we are going to get older and die is something we must take into consideration in choosing a morality to live by. There are decisions we make that have long-term consequences, and because we may ignore the inevitable aging and death of our bodies, those decisions may prove regretful and contrary to our existing moral principles when those times come. But when we die, society and nature doesn't die. This is also an inescapable fact. When we observe others pass away, we are still here, we still exist. Life goes on. What will make us think it will be any different when we individually pass away? The moral imperative of accumulating and owning capital will be failed upon death, because at that point, we own nothing. However, the moral imperative of producing capital for society will not be failed upon death. Regardless of if we own the capital we produce or if others own it is irrelevant. If managed and organized properly, the wealth we produce will live on when we don't. Such is the best basis, I argue, for charity. From the capital we create, to then create, mentor, and influence those individuals who will live on and compose society in the future, producing capital. Of many forms of charity that could accomplish this, the raising of a family seems to be the most obvious choice. To create new individuals that wouldn't exist if not for our productive actions. To nurture, educate, and culture them for this world to be as capable and productive as possible. Outside of raising new human beings, we can promulgate ideas and theories of nature that help people to be productive. To research, discover, and share those useful theories of nature. Who are we as human beings but the summation of material wealth provided by our parents, guardians, and society, combined with all the experiences, influences, and knowledge we have received throughout life? These things, inherited from the productive actions of our parents, guardians, and mentors, which we then rely on to make the correct decisions and actions to accomplish and fulfill our goals and desires. Realize that human beings are but another form of capital. So then, to produce capital, to produce wealth, is to produce life. The more wealth we produce in life, the more life will exist after we are gone.